All right, well, welcome to today's episode. I am Lisa Ivy. I'm here with my good friend Travis Gordon, and we are going to talk today about social media, Travis. It's going to be great. This is going to be a fun episode.
I hope so. I think a lot of times this stuff is just like one beggar helping another beggar find some food.
That's probably what it's going to feel like. But we've got a lot to share today, so we're just going to jump into it. And social media is everywhere. We know that kids are using it all over the place. When we go into schools, this is probably one of the biggest issues that we see with kids because they're all talking about it all the time. So how common is social media use among teens today?
Yeah, so some of the stats that we've seen said that probably 98% of teens at this point have social media. And even tweens, so those that are not yet to teenage years, they've been able to also coerce their parents into letting them have socials. And what happens is that kids are getting phones younger and younger. Even if it's not a phone that's attached to cellular yet, if they have a phone that's a hand-me-down from a parent that's on Wi-Fi, you've effectively still given them a phone. The only thing is that they can't use it, outside of a place where they've got Wi-Fi. And so typically along with a phone comes the desire for social media.
Yeah.
And it's because they see their older siblings on it. They see their parents on it. And so, one of the recurring themes that we've had during the series is that kids are going to mirror and model what they see their older siblings and then especially their parents. And so when they see their parents there, then they're like, okay, well, this looks cool. I want to be a part of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, it's crazy. 98% of teenagers. That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a one-to-one. If you have a phone, you probably have some sort of social.
Yep. So really what we're talking about today is going to apply, I think, to all parents. And probably this is an overwhelming area for a lot of parents. Social media didn't really come out big. I don't know. You can speak to this. Facebook came out when we were in college. So
well, and we're also maybe a little bit on the elitist side for Facebook because you and I remember that you had to have a college email address to sign up for Facebook.
Yeah,
originally, and so and then so we felt really cool at the time, like we're in college, we get a Facebook, and everybody else doesn't get one, and then they let everybody else in.
Now all the old people are using it,
and so it it just feels like it was kind of an exclusive club, and then it got opened up to the public, and then it's turned into everybody posting pictures of their food and animals and stuff to, really nasty political discourse. And I'm like, can we just get back to pictures of what you had for dinner or what you cooked today?
Yes.
Just make Facebook peaceful again.
Yes. That's our campaign slogan. So when Facebook came out, let's just go on this rabbit trail for a minute. When Facebook came out when we were in college, I remember thinking it was terrifying. I was super creeped out by it because I thought, why would you want to share this kind of information about yourself on the internet with a bunch of random strangers? But the practicality of this when we were in college is that I remember your friend group especially would use it to track down girls that you potentially wanted to date and do a recon. So there was good to that at the time.
It was something that we never had before.
Right.
And so if you were, say, perhaps interested in somebody and you wanted to find out a little bit more about them, you had to go to your friends, which aren't necessarily always a reliable source of information.
Especially your friends.
And so it was a way for you to be able to go and just see what they're posting. What are they into? Do we have mutual interests?
Yes.
And so it was a really good way to do that. And now what's interesting is that as time has gone on, that's probably still happening quite a bit, but now your employers are doing that too.
Yes.
And so, your employers are going out there and looking to see what you're doing on Facebook. And so they want to go and see what kind of things do you post? Are you the kind of person that we want, character-wise working at our business?
Yeah.
And so it's transformed into beyond really just, hey, I want to go see what this other person's like to see if I need to strike up a conversation with them, to see if I want to hire them or keep them employed at my business because they do really silly things on the internet.
Yes. Do I want to pay them dollars now is where that amounts. And not just employers. We'll probably get into this a little bit more later, but colleges are doing the same thing. I know you see this at UT, that they're looking at potential students and applicants to say, hey, are you somebody we want to actually admit to the school, because are you going to do something that's going to embarrass us? Your social media is a pretty good gauge of that.
It is, and and what colleges, getting into college is more competitive than ever now.
Yeah.
University of Tennessee, where I work, is a place where, they're getting a lot more applicants across the whole entire country now than ever before. And so they can only admit so many of those. And so they want to know what kind of people they're admitting to the university.
Yeah.
And so that's, to try to help provide a certain kind of character of the students that are there, but then also a little bit just to kind of protect themselves, because oftentimes whenever students make the news, it's, student name, comma, student at the University of Tennessee did something really dumb this week. And so they want to make sure that they're not tied to those things. And you see it a lot in athletics as well.
Yeah.
And so, this isn't just a UT thing. This is all across the board, that there are people that help the student athletes monitor their social media use, because whenever these things become public, they go viral, and it can get the schools into trouble along with the student athletes.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to help also just protect it's not just self-serving interest. They're trying to protect these student athletes, because unfortunately, if you go look on social media, people have no filter. And so people are incredibly cruel. And I would say particularly to athletes for lack of performance. The quarterback has a bad game, the running back fumbles a ball and at the goal line and costs them a game. I mean, there are people rushing to social media to berate them and to drag them down. And so they're trying to help protect the emotional well-being of these athletes, because most of these people wouldn't go up to, the 6'5", 220-pound running back who can barrel you over. They're not going to go up to them on the street and have these words. I can guarantee that. And so they feel safe doing it on social media.
Yep.
And so it's just a really weird societal thing where, we've gotten really safe behind our keyboards. And that's really kind of one of the big dangers of social media, is it gives you this idea of safety through obscurity, through anonymity on the internet, and so you have things that you may say to somebody online that you would never say to them if you were face to face, which is really kind of tragic for society that we've gotten to that point.
Yeah, I agree. It gives that false sense of security that you can say whatever you want to, and like you said, you're not going to walk up to that guy in public and say these things, even if he's not 6'5" and doesn't weigh 300 pounds. I'm not going to walk up to you and say the same things to you that somebody might say behind a screen. And some of the things that I think have been interesting, even just in the last year or two, as I've been watching this more closely, you mentioned colleges might be getting in trouble on the sports side of things because of things that athletes are posting, but gosh, other schools trolling your team because your athlete did something dumb and it ended up on social media. That is everywhere. And no school wants to deal with that, right? Like UT does not want, Ole Miss coming to have a good reason to make fun of us, because we already hate Lane Kiffin. We don't hate anyone on this podcast, but we don't need more reasons for them to show up and talk trash to us.
So it's interesting there though, because there's almost been this kind of pass for official social media accounts to troll other official social media accounts.
Yes.
I think it's maybe Wendy's, like whoever the admin is for Wendy's.
Yeah. Wendy's is crushing
their job is to go out and troll other businesses, especially like the official McDonald's, X account. And so you see that. And so that sort of interaction between companies is almost a positive engagement, because it's all really for fun and for tongue in cheek, Ole Miss would troll Tennessee, about the whole mustard incident, right, with Lane Kiffin. And so it's one of those things where enough time has passed that it's actually kind of funny.
Right.
And so when you see those kind of interactions that are lighthearted for fun, and both parties are playing into it, then I think it's fine.
Right.
I think it's whenever it gets into being a one-sided thing that it becomes a problem. But I think that falls into the category of food and dog pics for me on the internet. Like I love to see these two accounts, trolling each other, as long as it stays within like those safe waters of like we're not being insulting,
right?
Or overly insulting. We have a local dairy farm company here in Knoxville who trolls heavily.
Man, and it is awesome.
And it's hilarious. And they will advertise, Wildcat Tears as one of their special milks of the month. And so it's funny. And then you see other people roasting them. It's like, y'all just got trolled by a dairy farm. How do you feel about that? But again, it's all lighthearted. It's in good fun.
Right.
They're not out there telling them to go do terrible things to themselves because they fumbled a ball at the goal line.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it really is that severe. I mean, you're not exaggerating on that. It's most people probably, unless you're in that realm of watching sort of this college sports world online, you probably are not super. I mean, you may have a cranky attitude because your team lost yesterday, but you're also not dealing with some of the things, even just this spring, watching some of our baseball players. Like, gosh, they went through a slump, which you go through in baseball, and you're watching these guys get torn apart, their whole personal lives on social media. So I'm glad that there are people who are watching out for some of those kids, because that's a lot to deal with when you're 19, 20 years old.
It is.
It's a lot to deal with when you're an adult.
And I get, they're like, well, they're getting paid these days. And most of them are not getting paid, but you hear advertised.
Right.
And then let's just say too that regardless of what you're getting paid, maybe we should treat humans with dignity regardless of what their salary may be.
Yeah.
And so I think that would go a long way for a lot of us if you remember that these are real human beings that are on the other end of these accounts that are actually checking them. Especially for like the student athletes, for the most part, these aren't handlers that are handling these accounts.
Right.
The school accounts, even a lot of the coaches' accounts, like those are like there are people that are taking care of that.
Right.
For
They have staff.
that guy. They have staff that are helping with those admins. And so you're not talking directly to those people typically. But when you're talking about players, and this goes for professional athletes too.
Yeah.
When you're talking about players, so a lot of these athletes, like it's really their account. And so a lot of them, I'm sure, turn off the mentions and the ads and the DMs and stuff, but they still may see some of this stuff, and so that doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, and that's something. I mean, that's not really our lane, but since we're talking about it, for parents who do have athletes, especially as they're hitting sort of those high school years and moving into the idea of playing ball in college, it doesn't matter what level they're playing at. If they're playing at any point in college, that's something you need to watch out for and be aware of with that as well. So I mentioned earlier, Facebook came out when we were younger, just a couple years ago. I will not mention what year that was, but we did not grow up in a world of social media, and so we were really more into that adult years when social media became a big thing. And of course, there was MySpace some before that. MySpace was not a thing when I was in high school, so I don't remember that being. I don't know. You may have had a different experience than me.
Trying to think.
That.
Yeah, so I probably had a MySpace in high school.
That was never a thing for my age group. So I think I was probably right on the cusp of that. But kids now are growing up in a world where social media really rules their life, in a lot of senses. This is, it covers everything that they do. And so even whether we just talked about it from the perspective of athletes, it doesn't matter. If you're a teenager, if you're a middle school student, imagine going through puberty and everyone is roasting you on your Instagram because you got a pimple and your voice is changing. Those are the kind of things that kids are dealing with now. And so all that to say, it's a different world that kids are growing up in now than how their parents probably grew up. And I think that's part of what's overwhelming for parents with social media, because it really is a fairly new concept. And it's changed the world pretty quickly. So we'll get into it. All right, let's talk a little bit about what this actually looks like with different platforms. So Snapchat, let's start there. Snapchat is my least favorite app for kids because of the origins of Snapchat. And I think the whole app is super deceptive. So Snapchat, you probably know, was created years ago by a couple of college-age guys who were being college-age guys. They wanted to create an app where they could send inappropriate pictures and not get busted. And really, just to go a little deeper into that, the likelihood of a female sending you an inappropriate picture increases substantially if she thinks that picture is going to disappear, right? She's going to be way more likely to send that picture as opposed to someone who thinks that picture is going to be around forever. So the app in the concept was probably not the kind of app that you want, an 11-year-old on. So I don't really love it conceptually for kids. And I do think it's deceptive because it has that disappearing technology. Kids are so convinced that those pictures really disappear. Right. The videos disappear. It's gone. Nobody's ever going to see it. It doesn't disappear. Snapchat keeps a record of it forever. And they're very open about that. They're not hiding that. You just have to know where to look. So just a general user on the app may not be aware of that. But if you pay any attention to the company itself, they're pretty open that they're keeping a record forever.
Yeah, well, they probably so first of all, they probably have to,
Yeah.
for legal reasons.
Yes.
Right. And so whenever these pictures disappear, they're disappearing from your phone, but they're not disappearing on the servers that Snapchat has to host and the archives that they have to keep with all that data.
Right.
Because if there is some sort of court order for them to release content, they're going to have to be able to do that at some point.
Yeah.
Another big thing that I think is always a concern there too is, how many companies have we heard of in the past 5 years that have had a data breach? So pretty much anybody that had a Target account, for example, within the last, I think that was probably 6 or 7 years ago at this point. But I think anybody that had a Target account knows what they had to deal with the data breach.
Yeah.
And so, so Snapchat is also one data breach away from all those pictures being taken and just linked out on the dark web for anybody to go see. And so I think a lot of people would be very embarrassed if those things were leaked out and then tied to people.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
these things really don't disappear because they are keeping records for archival and data retention purposes that they have to keep the data. And so it just gives you that false sense of security. And I think that's the thing that really kind of gets the kids. They think they're secure. They think they're doing this where nobody can see it or find out. And they even get a greater false sense of security because, so somebody can take a screenshot of a snap and they're like, well, Snapchat tells me if it was screenshotted.
Yeah, you
and
get
I'm
the
like,
notification.
Okay, great. So now you're an educated person that's had your stuff stolen. Like, that doesn't make it better.
Yeah.
Now you know that they took it. And so then you have to text them and say, hey, can you delete that?
Yeah, like
and
they're going
the
to.
answer may be yes, and it may be no. And so even knowing doesn't really help. It gives you that false sense of security, and it doesn't actually help. And the other thing that I've just never really got, and this may just be the old guy in me, is there's nothing really that I've ever seen that Snapchat does that a messaging app on your phone doesn't do.
Right.
Like Snapchat is reproducing the same experience essentially. Like you can, through your iPhone or Android phone, you can send pictures to people. Like the only thing it may be doing are the
filters.
So it's doing that, and that's fun. So
And there are other apps that you can do that
and so
on.
there are other apps that do that thing that don't do the messaging part of it. And so, so if it was just the filtering, it would be different. But of course, they've got the messaging component because that's integral to for them developing the app in the first place.
Right.
And so I don't see that part ever going away.
No, I agree. So along with that, we were just talking before we started filming about Snap Streaks, and you just found out a little bit about this.
I didn't know that was a
recently.
thing, and so
Yeah.
it's interesting because a lot of these apps are putting some sort of streak counter into their apps now to bring you back again and again.
Yep.
I recently installed Duolingo, and so that app will hound you to death to try to come back, and so they're trying to keep you coming back
to learn their language,
to learn a language, which is a great thing in and of itself. But the apps, especially if you turn on your push notifications and all that, they're going to hound you to death. And so I went to camp recently where there was no internet or Wi-Fi, and one of the things that the students were terrified about, what about my Snap Streak? And I'm just like, first of all, what? And second of all, who cares? Like what does this streak
You're not going to
matter?
win a prize.
There's
no Wildcat tears at the end of this.
there's no prize at the end of this tunnel for a streak. This is just a youth thing. And
Yes.
so, but it's I think it's that dopamine hit that they get.
Yeah.
And so they want that to see that streak. And so,
sure.
and so that's a thing. And so they find ways to get you to keep coming back to this app. And I think the streaks is one of the big ways that they're able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I really have been so frustrated with about Snapchat, they released a report. The company Snap Inc. actually released this report. This is not from outside reporting. And this was in 2023. So it's been a couple years now, but they said that 2/3 of their teenage users self-reported that they had experienced some type of online exploitation through Snapchat, which is crazy to me.
That's really high.
Yeah. And this report has just sort of gone under the radar. I don't know if people are just like, well, I guess it's just part of it, but it's wild to think about that and how frequently it's happening on this app. So
Well, let me ask you this. So if I wanted to find that report, how do I know that report exists?
I would say that your friend Chat can find that for you, but
Yeah.
Google,
But
if you just
parents
look for
aren't.
it
The
on
thing
Google.
is,
right, exactly.
Parents
yes.
aren't going to know.
Yes.
And so they have to use like a resource like this to know, oh, wait a
Right.
second. So Snapchat will report stuff like this. And
Yeah.
it's just like, maybe sometimes.
Yeah.
But those kind of things aren't making the news.
Right.
Typically. And so I think that they can release these reports and, nobody cares. And so you get to the, log falls in the woods, nobody hears it. Did it make a sound kind of a thing? And so they can release this data, but if it's not out there in somebody's face, they're not going to ever see it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right about that. So one thing I do want to point out, because you mentioned a minute ago, like if there is ever a data breach with Snapchat, there's new legislation that is now federal law that was just passed this past spring. It's called the Take It Down Act. And this is really beneficial for parents to be aware of.
Yep.
Again, it's been in the news a little bit, but if you are not really looking for it, it could have been easily overlooked. The idea of this is that now legally, so let's say Snap does have a data breach. Your kid has sent naked pictures. They've not reached the age of consent. They're not 18. So those, obviously, it doesn't matter. Even if your kid was willing in that instance and they were the one that took the picture and sent it, legally, they've not reached the age of consent. So if that picture gets leaked and it makes its way to Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever, it doesn't matter, you can report that to the company and set, not to Snapchat, but to the second party, where it's been released. And within 48 hours, that company now is legally required to take that picture down. And they face really, really stiff fines if they do not cooperate. So that's a huge piece of legislation that's helpful for parents. That could be the same thing if your kid's data breach or not. If somebody takes a picture, screenshot of your kid on Snapchat, that's something for parents to be aware of on the tail end. Usually parents don't find out about this until after the picture has already been leaked.
Oh, of course.
So, we want to make sure they're aware.
Yeah, but that's good. I think, it's a good example of the federal government stepping in a place where they probably have to try to enact legislation to try to help protect the kids.
Yes. And that's
so I
true
thought that
with
was good.
AI generated content as well. It doesn't even have to be something that is an actual picture, even if it's AI generated. If it's of a minor, it doesn't matter. They're required to take it down, which is great. Okay. One of your favorite features, I know, on Snapchat is Snap Maps, which you like to call.
Which I like to call the predator shopping list.
Which is terrible.
Which is really terrible. And again, that's one of those features that I'm like, why is this a feature?
Yep.
And so it's a feature essentially that allows you to give away your location, and you and everybody else who is using Snapchat in a given place, you can see them on a map.
In real time.
In real time, and you can see where they are. And so everybody that and I don't know, is it restricted to just people that you are friends with, or does it show everybody? It just opens it up.
It depends on, you can adjust those settings. But yeah, if you don't have any privacy settings set up for that feature, then anybody.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and guess that most kids aren't really setting that privacy setting for themselves.
Exactly.
And so you should go ahead and assume that it's open to everybody. But even if they accidentally, friending somebody on Snapchat that they don't know, somebody sends them a request, they goof up and they hit accept, and it was somebody that is a predator who's looking to groom somebody, you've given them your instant access to where you are.
Yes.
And so it's a huge privacy violation. And so, a lot of times when parents start having these conversations with students and they're with their kids and they're like, well, you're violating my privacy. The response back to the parents would be like, you violated your privacy already.
You did that on your own.
You gave it to them. You gave them, you opened your account to be public and you posted all these things. Like, you are actively violating your own privacy every single day. I'm here just to try to help you reel that back in a little bit.
Yes,
one of
absolutely.
the analogies that I like to use whenever we're talking to kids and their parents is, social media is like going to a water park or theme park or something. Like, we're not saying don't ride the roller coaster. Like, roller coasters are rad. We want to have a good time. We're just saying, hey, you might want to buckle up.
Right.
Before you go down. Like, if you're on the water slide, you want to cross your legs and feet and keep your head back so you don't end up flying off of the 5-story tall water slide.
Exactly.
And so we're not saying don't do it. We're saying, hey, let's put some boundaries on it to make sure we're doing it safely.
Yeah, there's some guardrails in
So
place.
that's our word of warning for the parents. And so when they have this map, they're able to see what you look like, because typically your avatar that you create, you try to make look like yourself.
Right.
And predators, when they're given assignments, because again, like go back to our first episode, these are professionals.
Right.
Like, these are people that this is what they do for a living. This isn't just the random person that woke up and said, I think I'll exploit a teen today. These are people that, okay, so that does happen, but a lot of these people are people that work for organizations. And so they're given a shopping list.
Right.
And so they're saying, hey, I need boys that are this age. I need girls that are this age.
Yeah,
I
this
want
hair color,
I want
eye color.
all these features. And so they go out and they shop for these things. And so you make the shopping really easy and tell them where you are by putting this information out there public. And this is just another one of the features that are this built into this app that I'm just like, why?
Yeah.
I've already said I don't understand why the app exists in the first place, because there's nothing in there really that you can do that you can't do with messaging, just standard normal texting back and forth. But then you add this layer on top of it, and it's really confusing and then really, really dangerous ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. And predators, like you just said, they're not only exploiting Snap Maps, but they are exploiting that disappearing technology because they know that there is less evidence of the crimes that they're committing. Now, that doesn't mean in the long run, Snapchat's a little bit different because, as you mentioned, if law enforcement gets involved and they start subpoenaing things, that's going to be a different story. But for an average parent who's just monitoring what's going on with their kid, they don't have access to the disappearing messages. So it's easier for a predator to have that ongoing conversation with your kid and make, relationship with them, build a relationship with them without parents being aware of what's happening because those messages are frequently disappearing. So they take advantage of that, and that's something for parents to be aware of. Okay, so a few safety features that parents need to be aware of with Snapchat. Obviously, we want to encourage parents. This is true with all social media, but make sure that you've disabled location services. And Travis, we always recommend that parents do that, not just in the app, but do it in the settings of your kid's device.
Right.
Because, especially on Snapchat, this is one where I've noticed this in particular. Ghost mode is what the setting is called when you're turning off location services within Snapchat. Your kids can manipulate that setting. Right. So as a parent, setting up that parental control does really very little good. And even to the point that your kids may be sharing the location with just one or two people, that seems in theory like it's not a big deal. Maybe they're sharing their location with their best friend, or maybe they're sharing their location with their new best friend that they made yesterday on Snapchat. Like, you don't know who they, are sharing that with.
Yeah. Or their friend's account got hacked.
Exactly.
And that's why accounts get hacked. And so, when people are like, I don't understand why somebody would want to hack into my Snapchat like that, that seems silly. Well, they want to hack in because you have given them a doorway to potentially hundreds, if not thousands of people that think that you are somebody who's legitimate.
Yeah.
And so your account is valuable for that reason.
Yeah.
We see that a lot at UT. Students are like, why do people want to hack my UT email? What's the big deal? And they're like, oh, and then we have to remind them, oh, by the way, your FAFSA and your balance for your fees and everything, and the account that you use to pay those fees, or which is probably mom and dad's account, all that information is inside there. And so your account, regardless of what platform it's on, is worth real money because they can use that to go and attack other people.
Wow. So next setting is there's a setting called Who Can Contact Me. We want to make sure that that's set to friends only.
Yep.
In any social media genre, obviously there's the risk of just randos who are trying to friend your kids. That happens a lot, especially as kids get into high school. You'll have random people who are just, looking for a teenager to be friends with online. Those are probably not the people you want your kids to be friends with.
I tell people to be wary of friends as well.
Yes.
Just because you can't vet that other person. And so make sure you actually know this person that you are going to connect with.
Yeah.
That's just a way to keep yourself safe. If you don't, don't friend the random person that you passed by at camp. I saw that happen a couple times, and so they're walking by each other, boy sees girl, girl sees boy. They share each other's Snap information.
Snaps, and they are on the map together.
And there they are. And I'm like, you may never see this person again.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Don't open yourself up to that kind of exposure because it's not safe.
Yes, absolutely. You have no idea who that person really is. Yeah. And then the last thing on Snapchat is to make sure you're talking to your kids about the risk of sending a photo that they don't want shared publicly. The idea is if you don't want grandma to see it, don't send it.
Right.
So I think that's just a good rule of thumb on Snapchat. You have any other thoughts on Snapchat?
No, I think we covered that pretty well.
All right.
So you mentioned that Snapchat was one of your least favorites, and it's up there for me.
Yep.
But I think mine's TikTok.
Okay.
And so it's, to me, that my problem with TikTok is that it's kind of purposefully dangerous.
Yes.
And so a lot of the stuff that gets shared on Reels on Facebook and Instagram are things that were posted to TikTok first, and so that is true. But you don't have these lists of TikTok challenges. Like there's no Instagram challenges, Facebook challenges. You don't hear that terminology used. You hear about the TikTok challenges where real people that are our kids' age are dying.
Yeah.
Because they did very unsmart things on the internet and they posted videos about it. You had the Tide Pod challenge, you had the blackout challenge, the one chip challenge. I mean, all these different things that went viral. And I think that, I'd say that Meta is doing a pretty good job of trying to keep people safe. Like not great, but again, some of the stuff is being forced on them due to legal action in the government. But Meta is, I think, seeing like, okay, well, if we end up harming our entire user base, they're not going to stick around, and so we might need to keep them around and keep them safe to use the product. And so I think that they're doing a pretty decent job of that. But TikTok doesn't seem to care.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why you see it banned at state institutions, at the federal level. At UT, we block it on our network wholesale. It's not allowed to be used on our network. And it's because it's causing a lot of harm to our kids. So that's my beef with it is that there's no governing body over to saying like, hey, maybe we shouldn't promote this stuff. And then TikTok is also very aggressive with their algorithms for keeping you engaged and engrossed. So for better or worse, the app does its job, which is to keep you engaged and keep you scrolling.
Yeah.
The problem is that a lot of the content on there is just not good content. And one of the things that I kind of hate to see is that its user base is so big. A lot of people that are people that I follow on social media also feel like they had to get on TikTok because that's where the people are. And I'm like, I can't get in. Like I can't buy into that.
Yeah.
And so I will engage with your stuff on other platforms, but I'm going to have to say no to TikTok. And TikTok is one of those apps that is just wholesale banned in my house. Like, don't even ask. And my kids really haven't asked because they already know, like, Dad's going to say no.
Yeah.
And one of the words of warning that I put also on TikTok is like, if the federal government is worried enough that they're wanting to do something about it, like that should probably be some red alarms there for parents at home.
Because that has to get pretty bad.
It has to be pretty bad for them.
Man, this one may not be great for us.
Yeah, and so if they think it's bad, like that's something like, oh wow. And so if the government actually cares, maybe this is something I should care about too.
Yeah.
So I think that parents have to be really cautious. So a lot of these apps, so we don't love Snapchat, but we say, you might be able to let your kids use it with some safeguards on it. TikTok is one of those that I can't even really recommend, for that. And again, it goes back to it being unsafe and real people dying because of real things that they tried. But again, it's that addictive trait that it adds in there with those algorithms to try to help keep you going through and keep you locked into the app. And so I just think it's not good either for our mental health.
Yes, I would agree with all of that. One of the challenges that we have heard about so much in schools this year is Ding Dong Ditch, which, we're of an age that we remember Ding Dong Ditch pre-TikTok. But it's big again on TikTok, and I hear about it everywhere. So the problem with Ding Dong Ditch in 2025 is that people are not laughing like they did in the 80s. Like this is not the same as 1993. So kids are telling me, I've had a lot of kids. I mean, I'm talking double digits, high double digits. Just this past school year, have told me that someone they know or they themselves have had a neighbor pull a gun on them.
Yeah.
Because they did Ding Dong Ditch, which is not a great idea.
It's not, and it's really interesting because that's not surprising because within about the last 30 years, just societally, people have become very protective of their homes. That's why you see, we have it now because of the technology that's gotten there. But most people have a Ring doorbell now.
Yeah.
Or some sort of video doorbell. They have, they video cameras on their floodlights. So another thing too is you've seen just like the American household retreating from the front porch to the back porch.
Right.
And now, and that's why, you see people whenever somebody rings your doorbell, you're like, oh goodness, what do they want? You're not like, 30 years ago,
Why
you're
are
like,
they
who's,
here?
who's here to see me? I
Yeah.
can't wait to go welcome them and say hello. Your doorbell rings and you're like, what does this person want? What are they
Oh, it's
selling?
Amazon. Wow. Why'd they
And
bring my
so-
package?
And so, and I'm funny just because a lot of the people that we have over to our house, I'm like, please don't ring the doorbell. Don't make me get up to let you in. I know you're coming. Just walk in.
Walk in.
And so my favorite friends are the people that don't bother me with the doorbell. Like, hey, I told you to be here at 5. If my door opens at 5:00, I'm not going to think it's some sort of intruder. I'm going to know it's you bringing everybody in. Let's just keep the doorbell out of it.
Everyone
Okay. Just
that
come on in.
listens to this is going to show up at your house and just walk in your house.
So if you are my friend and I am expecting you have full free reign to
got-
walk in.
you got
But so people now, so the point of all that is that people now are very protective of their front doors.
Yeah.
In a way that they weren't even really 30 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, so something that was, we would have seen as very essentially harmless back when we were kids.
Yeah, kids are having fun.
Is now something that can be extremely dangerous because
Yes.
people don't want people coming to their front door anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the big societal shifts. And then on top of that, one of the big things is, whenever we were kids, we knew to come home whenever it got too dark to see in front of us.
Right.
And so,
Yeah, the street lights come on. It's time to come
yeah,
home.
that's how you know. And so, I look back and, and my parents let me roam the neighborhood, ride my bike wherever.
Same.
We lived in a place where there were some railroad tracks that led to a baseball card shop. And so my parents, once I got to a certain age, would let me, run down there to the card shop. And now I'm like, I would never let my kids, I don't even want my kids riding their bicycle down to the mailbox. And we live in a safe neighborhood.
Yes.
And so even that kind of approach, and I talk to lots of parents and
Yeah.
parents feel the same way. They're like, I would never let my kids just roam around the way that my parents let me roam around.
Yeah.
And so you just see kind of some societal shifts, and it's because, the world is just a very different place than it was 20, 30 years ago.
Absolutely. So a couple big takeaways for parents on TikToks. Same ideas as on Snapchat. The feature is called Allow Others to Find Me. You want to disable that feature so that any rando can't find your kids on TikTok. Direct messages, in theory, on TikTok, if your kid is 16 or younger, they can't get a DM, which is a great feature. So that's one thing I do appreciate about TikTok because, like you said, they can, if they're messaging with their friends, they're probably doing it through their phones.
Right.
You don't need an app for that. But again, that's based on the birthday that's entered and associated with your TikTok account. So
Yeah,
if
so
your
who
kid
created
set
the
it
account?
up, yeah, and they look like they're 30 on their TikTok, And by the way, I ask kids a lot of times in classrooms if they have ever lied about their age online.
Of course.
And 90% of them have
Yeah.
lied about their age online. And the other 10% are probably lying in the class, But
Right.
what's so funny to me, Travis, is that the kids know they have lied about their birthdays. They can't imagine or fathom adults lying about their ages online.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's mind blowing to them because I think for a lot of kids, they're like, I want to look older. And so they're like, why would an adult lie about their age? Well,
Right.
listen, dum-dum. It's because they want you to think that they're not as old as they really are. So anyway, duets and stitches are big things for underage accounts that you want to watch out for. And so essentially a duet is when I create content and then you create the same content and they're side by side.
Okay.
So I'm singing whatever. I'm singing Britney Spears and you're here beside me singing Britney Spears. I don't know why it's Britney Spears, but that's who it is today. So this is not a great thing for kids. Kids do this with celebrities. So that's not
Okay.
the issue that I have. The issue that I would say here is if your child has created the content and somebody is duetting with your child, that can get really inappropriate.
It's
and something
weird.
gets raunchy. Yeah,
Yeah.
people are saying some really inappropriate things. And then, of course, we want to talk to our kids about the dangers of those viral trends. They're cycling through all the time. And so talk to your kids about those. Even if you don't know what the newest one is, it doesn't matter. But just in general, have that conversation with your kids that they're not going out and knocking on people's doors in the middle of the night and live streaming it.
Yeah, and there's one last security feature I'd really recommend to parents is that when you got the app there on the screen, if you press and hold it, there's going to be a little X that appears. Just press and hold, hit the X, and all of these problems with TikTok just go away.
Everything is gone away. We really don't know yet because at the time of us filming this, there is still really this up in the air of whether or not TikTok's
Right.
even going to be banned. So maybe all our dreams will come true and we won't have to worry about TikTok anymore.
Again, sometimes we can't really give the government a lot of credit, but if they're concerned, maybe, just maybe, we should be
Yeah,
concerned.
maybe we should pay attention
Yeah.
to that. So, okay, let's get into Meta. We've already talked about it a little bit, but Meta is the house of Meta includes Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp. Those are really their primary. I know they're also doing some things with VR headsets, but for the sake of today, let's focus on the big ones. Where do you want to start? Which one do you want to start with of those three?
I think the most common one that we're going to see at least younger people on is going to be Instagram.
Absolutely.
So Facebook is actually making a little bit of a resurgence with young people again, but Instagram is still the place where the first social media apps that any of my kids ask me for are Instagram.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really good place to start because I think it's going to be the most common starting point. Because Instagram, Facebook has really kind of developed this app to be a competitor to everything essentially.
Yes.
So you in Instagram, you've got the reels, you've got the photo sharing, and you've got all these different things that are in there. You've got the direct messaging.
And even the vanish mode is what they call their disappearing messages.
So they have disappearing messages too now. And I'm like, can we just not do this? But they're trying to compete, right? And so they're a business and they are ultimately trying to compete with Snapchat for that. And so I think that's one of the reasons that it's so popular. And again, it's people want to post not just text. They want to post a video or a picture showing them doing something.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the reasons that Instagram has gotten so popular. And one of the things that we've learned over the past couple of years with technology like X or Twitter is that posts with images and video get a lot more engagement than just posts with just text.
Yes.
And so
any kind of movement, it's wild.
Yeah. So you want to see that because your eyes stop on it. And so when you're scrolling through and you see something moving, a video that might be interesting, then you are going to want to stop and pause. And the way that the technology is developed is it is basically sitting there, what I say, one Mississippiing your views. And so, so the app is sitting there looking, how long did they look at this? So that way I can know if I need to serve them more of this content. And so you get into a little bit of the TikTok problem there is that these algorithms that these companies use are really good.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that I know a lot of people believe is that our phones are listening to us. And so they're going to feed us ads about things that we've talked about. And so people ask me, is that true? And I would just say that in my experience, that might be true.
Yeah.
Because, a few years ago, we were sitting at a dining room table and we weren't on our phones and we were talking about taking a cruise together with another family, and Facebook started serving ads for cruises, and we hadn't searched for this. So a lot of times they're using, a lot of times when you open an app now for the first time, it says, do you want this app to be able to track your viewing habits in order to serve you ads, because they want to personalize those ads. And it's interesting because that proposition is both good and bad. And so the good thing for actually letting them track where you go is they can serve you ads that are relevant to you. And then you don't have to worry about it serving the weirdo random ads because they are personalizing them to you.
Right.
The bad thing is that you're letting them track you.
Yes.
And so I don't really know what the right answer is there. But you do have this give and take there with at least you're getting ads that you want to see, because one of the things that we'll talk about when we look at YouTube here in a few minutes is that is the good thing about ads that are able to track you is you have a little bit more control over what they're showing you because you're telling it what to serve you. So if you were researching a certain video game or cruises or whatever, they're going to show you content that's related to that. Like my Instagram and Facebook videos or ads that it shows me, are typically based on something I was searching on the internet recently. So like mine are full of cooking things, So I'm into cooking and smoking and stuff like that, and so they serve me smoking meat. Yes. They serve me ads and videos that are related to food. And so I'm like, look, a new recipe. That's cool.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the good things is that it's able to serve you that kind of content. But with kids, they want to be able, they have this fascination with just showing what's going on in their lives. And then you've seen that start to creep up into adults now as well. And it was a lot of, us that were on Facebook, and so you have people that are just lurkers, people that are just kind of watching things. That's mostly me. I don't post a ton personally because I'm like, why do people want to know what's going on in my life?
Cares.
I don't understand that just, philosophically, like why you would post stuff all the time, but there's tons of people that they just love to post.
Sure.
They want everybody to know what they're doing at all times.
We listen, we don't judge.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's just not for me. But then on the other hand, you're like, well, you're a weirdo because you're just out there lurking all the time, not actually posting. And so, but these kids, that's how they interact with each other. is they do it online and they do it digitally, and they do it by sharing their posts, videos and pictures. And then the big thing you see too is them sharing content of each other as well. And so
Right.
like if you go look at their stories, their story may be one story about them, but them reposting their friends' stories. And one of the things that you see now in between Instagram and X is that's where colleges are going to recruit athletes. And so if you want to get recruited, you pretty much have to have a social media account now, because that's one of the ways that they will try to find you. And so, back in the day, you might mail, USPS mail your tapes to them. Well, that
Yes.
doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, nobody's watching VHS.
So they're not doing that. And so they're not even really looking at like YouTube compilations. They're looking at short 5 to 6 second long clips
Yeah.
on social media. And so that's another reason where you see a lot of kids wanting to get into social media, is because that's how they're hopefully going to get seen by colleges.
Yeah, they're going to make money off
and
of it.
hopefully make some money off of it.
So I'm glad that you brought that up. With Instagram, one of the features that I have a love-hate relationship with their new teen accounts that they released last year. The thing that I don't love about the teen accounts is that I think it's giving a little bit of a false sense of security, because the idea, the way they're promoting it is this is supposed to help limit a lot of inappropriate content that your kids could access, and we're seeing that that's not really true. So if that's why you're excited about a teen account, then hate to break it to you, but that's probably not helpful. One of the things I love about it, though, is that it is automatically setting your child's account to private
Right.
if they're 16 or younger. Again, that's based off the birthday affiliated with the account, so you want to make sure that the birthday's right. But that seems like a pretty easy thing to do, and it's a little bit easier on parents. Puts the impetus back on Instagram as opposed to parents having to go in and make sure those accounts
Right.
are set to private. So I really like that. But since you brought up athletes, this is something I recommend with kids, because they're in a little bit of a double bind there. Like,
Correct.
if you want to get recruited, you're not going to have a private account. So I always tell kids, if you are using Instagram for sports purposes, have a secondary
Have
account.
2 accounts.
It's
Absolutely.
okay to have your sports account and to have your football account, and you're posting your football stuff, but make sure it's exclusive to that.
Yep.
And think of it as your business. And so you've
is your
got
brand.
you've got your private account where you've got stuff with your friends. It's got more of your personal information. One of the other things I recommend on those public accounts is to make sure that the friends from school are not following that account. That seems crazy. And I know it's tough for kids because they're like, this coach is going to notice me. Like, Heupel's going to come recruit me because I've got 3,000 followers. Okay, probably that's not going to necessarily be the impact, But if your friends' lists are public on those public accounts, which is the case, this is the way that predators are able to access kids and really use that information to extort them. So when they have, even if it's an AI generated picture that looks sexual, they're going to say things to kids like, hey, if you don't pay me, I'm going to send this picture to everybody you know. Well,
Right.
that's how they know who the kids know. So make sure on those public accounts that there is not a large friend following. And another simple thing that Instagram has introduced it recently in the last couple of years is that you can hide who can see the likes on your posts, which I think
Okay.
is a great feature. Historically,
Right.
you clicked underneath the picture and you get a list of every user that liked that post. You can hide that feature now. And that's nice because, especially if you've got those public accounts for sports purposes, your friends may be liking. I may love that I saw that you threw that touchdown yesterday on your Instagram, Travis, but everybody doesn't need to know that I was the one that loved it, right? So you can hide that feature, and that's a great feature for parents to be aware of as well.
Well, and haven't they hit even the number of likes just to try to help promote the little bit of mental health?
Yeah.
So that way, whenever somebody posts something that only gets maybe 10 likes or something, they're not going into a mental free fall.
Right.
And so, so there's also the mental health aspect of that as well. As you post something one day and it gets 100 likes, you post something the next day and it gets 10 likes, and you're like, well, I guess people just don't like me anymore. And the reality is, it's like, nah, like the algorithm may have just not been serving that up that particular day.
Yeah.
And so you just never know what it's going to do to try to, what it's going to boost.
I'm going to
and
tell
so
myself
don't-
that the next time I post something on Instagram and I only get 10 likes, I'm going to be like,
Like,
Travis
oh.
said it was the algorithm.
Yeah,
it wasn't because
they decided the algorithms had not to bless me that day.
did-
That's all it is.
It has nothing to do with people not liking my food. Okay, so one thing that has been a big issue with Meta, but in particular with Instagram, is there are constantly reports coming out in the last couple of years of how they are targeting mental health in a negative way and feeding really ugly content to teenagers about things with body image. There was a report that came out this spring where essentially Meta, if it was a whistleblower, let me back up. Whistleblower who was a former Instagram employee who testified and I think testified before Congress and said that essentially if a teenage girl deleted 2 consecutive selfies, Instagram saw that as an opportunity to promote beauty and self-help content to that teenage girl, because the idea is you've deleted 2 selfies in a row, you feel bad about yourself. Here, let's sell you some junk.
Yep.
That's not great for our kids' mental health. So there are still a lot of issues, I think, even though, yes, I would say I'm in 100% agreement with you that Meta is miles ahead of some of the others as far as some of the things they're doing to help with kids. They're also miles behind some of the others. And so it's just this constant battle that we're in with these social media companies to try to get them to do the right thing for kids, and that doesn't really seem to be their priority.
Yeah, well, that's because their priority is making money.
Yeah, it's dollars.
And so, anytime you think that these social media companies are looking out for you, the answer is, yeah, they might be, but it's also because they need to look out for you so they can look out for their bottom line.
Yeah.
And so you see this throughout all of the industries, all this posturing by companies about what they're doing for the environment or for whatever cause it may be. They're companies. They don't really care. All they care about is just making money, so they don't go under.
Right.
In a very difficult economy. Under our current way of doing business.
Yes.
And so you see all these companies that are going under now and folding or getting bought by other companies, and it's because it's very difficult to be out in the marketplace, and companies are having to quickly evolve. You look at Blockbuster Video. Like there's literally one left in America.
Yeah, I can't look
so
at
you
it.
can't look at it because it's one. And so they missed the boat on that.
Yeah.
And so technology is changing so rapidly. Is that companies are just trying to keep up, and so they have to figure out how to make money. And when it comes to social media, their product is you. Like they are selling your, sometimes they're actually selling your information, but
Right.
but they're selling to you. And so they have to do anything they can to try to get those clicks off to their things where you can go and buy something because they're getting a kickback from that. And so they have to keep that revenue stream to keep the boat afloat. And so they are selling you as the product here in any of the social media. So they're never free. You are giving them what they need to make money.
Okay, so you had a personal story about Instagram with your wife that I would love for you to share.
Yeah. So one of the things, so we've talked a little bit here about, for how to keep yourself safe, right? Turn off location services. Like that's one. Like there's 2 big tent poles that we have here. And so we have turning off location services. You can do this on an app by app basis. That's really important. The other thing that is really important, this is one of the reasons that we tell, the athletes, hey, have 2 accounts. Have your public one that has to be public so people can see it, but keep your private one. And so you may think like, again, who cares if people see my stuff? What's the big deal of it being out there? Well, here's the big deal. A couple years ago, my wife, lovely,
wonderful,
lovely, well-meaning lady, she has always been into bags. She's a big Vera Bradley fan, and so she's always just been into bags. And one of the things that she saw as a critique, which is valid, is that a lot of times you look at these bags online and they don't really show you the inside swell. They don't show you how people pack it. And so she had this idea of, I'm going to be an influencer and I'm going to show people how, this bag and how you can pack it and how much it actually holds and what I put in my bag. So one of those kind of channels.
I would have followed it.
And so it was actually a really good idea because, like if you go to North Face's website and you're looking at a backpack, there's like the pictures are awful.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that you see. And so there's a need here. So good idea, very well meaning. But instead of creating another account, she took her account that was private,
full of pictures of your family,
full of our family pictures,
your house,
and then made it public.
Yep.
And then said, oh, well, that's not enough. If I want to be able to monetize this, I also need to make it a business account. Unbeknownst to her, when you make it a business account, it publishes your phone number out there too. And it was literally less than 48 hours of her making this choice that she received a text message where somebody had scraped a picture of one of our kids and created some sort of like meme type headline that was something along the lines of, you better keep an eye on your boy because we're coming after him.
Sheesh.
Had made a threat essentially for kidnapping.
Yeah.
And so being in IT, I saw this and there was a side of me that was like, this looks like phishing, right? This looks like something that's probably not legit. But then there's another side of like, I haven't seen this before. So we call 911. They send out their digital forensics person. We're talking to them. And unfortunately, even that person says, I haven't seen this, and so I'm thinking like they come over, they're like, oh yeah, we see this all the time. No big deal. I want them to have seen this.
Right.
They get to the house and they're like, wow, we haven't seen this before. This is interesting. And so they collect a bunch of information, they interview us, but they're honest with us. And they say, hey, people use, they spoof phone numbers, they use burner numbers. Our likelihood of actually tracking this person is basically non-existent.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can really tell you to do is just keep an eye on your kids. Wow, great. That's
really helpful.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay. And so we get no sleep that night. I mean, I am checking those we mentioned video cameras around the house earlier.
Yeah,
I'm checking those all night long. All of the lights outside are on, and I am getting up and I'm checking these things. My poor kid that was affected by this did not leave my side, was not dropped off at practices or anything like that without me there, sat in church with us, because I'm like, hey, so they may know where we go to church based on pictures that we've posted. They've seen the content. And so based on things that we've posted that are now public, they're able to track all this information about where we were, and they didn't have to hunt for it, right? We gave it away for free.
Yeah.
And so they didn't have to work for it. And so it was a really tough time. And the only thing that really healed that was time passing.
Right.
Finally, after 3 or 4 weeks, we felt okay, and we kind of let our guard down, and we've never really thought about it much since. But it was a very innocent thing.
Yes.
And the thing that I'm most thankful for is that when it happened, she come and told me. And so, so we tell kids all the time, like, do you get in trouble for doing the dumb thing or lying about the dumb thing or not telling your parents about the dumb thing? And it's always, you get more in trouble for not telling them. And so she came to me and was just like, hey, I made a whoopsie. I'm like, yeah, you made a big whoopsie.
Yeah.
But it, no malintent there, but.
And I would say, not your wife is not a kid. I'm not trying to draw the comparison there, but I would say with most kids, probably a lot of the missteps that they make on social media are exactly the same as adults. It is well-intentioned.
Oh, sure.
It's not that they're trying to do something super malicious, but they end up doing something that exactly like your wife. They had no idea that the repercussions were going to be what they were. I clicked a button. I had no idea that it was going to be the button that launched the nuke on Instagram, so to speak. So that can end up being a big issue.
Yeah, and I think this is a good place to say again, and we repeat this a few times, but the things that we talk about here for how to protect our kids are things that we need to take the medicine first.
Yes.
And so if you are a parent out there that's listening to this or watching this, and your accounts aren't private, let's go. Like, it's time to make them private.
Absolutely.
And so we have resources that we offer. But I'll tell you, if you want to know how to make your account private, just Google it. I mean, honestly, it's like the simplest answer is how to make my Facebook account private. That is the easiest way to go out there. So whatever app it is, if you just go and search on the internet how to make my account private for whatever technology you're using, or how can I keep myself safe, those resources are out there on the internet for you to go and access. And so
clean up your friends list.
Yes.
As adults, we need to do that. Our kids need to do that. Clean up your friends list from time to time. It's okay to go through and make sure your friends' accounts haven't gotten hacked.
Right.
And also make sure that they're people that you are actually close enough with that you want to share the content that you're sharing.
Yeah, there's a little rule that I try to follow sometimes, but like, if I know that I'm friends with somebody on social media and we pass each other in the grocery store and don't say hey, like, maybe it's just time we unfriend each other. Because if we're not going to talk in person, like, why do I want you following my information that I'm posting on Facebook, even though it's private? You don't need to see that. And so that's just a good, maybe a good rule to follow, is that if you pass by each other, look at each other and keep walking, you're not friends in real life. Probably don't need to be friends on social media either.
Oh, Travis, I'm really concerned about our future on social media, mine and yours. Like, are you going to talk to me in the grocery store, and are you going to unfriend me?
I'll still say hi.
All right, we'll see.
At least make eye contact. Give you a little nod
before I turn and walk the other direction. Okay, Facebook. So you mentioned Facebook is making a little bit of a resurgence with young people, but I think part of that is because of Facebook Marketplace. So Facebook Marketplace is, essentially today's Craigslist. Because who gets on Craigslist anymore? I don't know that's
Nobody.
even really. I don't know.
I don't think it exists anymore.
I don't know. Does it not?
I'm not sure. We'd have to fact check that.
Fact check that. But Marketplace is where you can sell anything and everything. So I've got a little bit of a story about Marketplace. I was out to eat last summer with one of my family members who is a college-age student. He was in town for the summer, so I took him to lunch. He's like, hey, I got to drop you off because I'm going over to buy something off Marketplace at this guy's house. And I'm like, hold on now, what? You're doing what? He says, yeah, I'm buying some Nikes that I found for $40. And so, which is stupid, to begin with. This is not going to be a good sale. But I'm going to their house to buy them. I said, you are not dropping me off before you go to buy the Nikes at some stranger's house. Do you know these people? No. Okay, I'm going with you. And I'm going in heavy protest that this is a terrible and unsafe idea for both of us. But I'm not letting you go alone. So we went, and it ended up being fun. But it was, a sketchy area on top of the fact that he would have been by himself. And in his mind, he's like, what's the big deal?
No big deal.
What's the problem? Nobody even knows you're going. So all that to say, please talk to your kids about who they're accessing stuff. Like, I think the thing is, our generation probably grew up in that era of watching a lot of Dateline and a lot of true crime documentaries. And so even buying things off Craigslist,
Unsolved mysteries.
Yeah, a lot of unsolved mysteries happening. You're not going to show up at somebody's, I don't know, people, I still know adults who do this. I think it's strange, but probably you don't want to do the front porch pickup. Like, meet them at the Blockbuster parking lot.
My wife does that all the time.
It's wild, man.
We had 2 front porch pickups this week. So,
and now you've told them they can come on in. So
now they know where we live.
Yeah. So all that to say, talk to your kids about that, because I think that's a big deal on Marketplace. Obviously, Facebook has, Facebook Kids. They've got some of those features that are geared towards younger kids. I don't know. I feel sort of neutral about them. All I would say about that is don't lean into that false sense of security and think just because it's got kids behind it that means it's a safe platform.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on Facebook you want to add?
No, I think as we wrap up here, we mentioned YouTube, and so I just want to touch on that, really quickly.
Yeah, hang on. Before we get there, let's talk about WhatsApp for 10 seconds.
Oh, that's right.
I know we hit WhatsApp in an earlier episode, but WhatsApp is still in that Meta house. It's encrypted technology end to end. I'm going to blunder this in the way I'm saying it, but essentially they're not keeping a record of what's happening on the app.
That's what
correct?
They say.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's now, and WhatsApp is even doing commercials now to try to help drum up business.
Yeah.
So they, their big thing is it's encrypted from end to end on both sides, and even we can't see it.
Right.
And so again, it's giving you that sense of security, which I don't know if it's a legit sense of security, so it could be a false sense, but that is what they're advertising their platform as.
Sure.
As a way to have information that's encrypted, because a lot of people, what they don't know is that when you send a text message or you send an email out to somebody, that is not by default encrypted. And what that means is that information gets passed in the wide open over the internet. Mm-hmm. And so like one of the things that is one of my huge pet peeves is we did foster care recently. Mm-hmm. And so when we submitted papers to the government, we had their secure way of sending documents was emailing them with social security numbers on there. And I would always ask them, again, this is the government. Yeah. I'm like, hey, do you have a secure way for me to submit this document? Yeah, email it. And then like the IT person in me is just giving a huge sigh, but there was no other option. And so whenever I email that document to them, it's not encrypted. It is not secure. And so it is sent over the free internet. And so anybody who may be looking at traffic, and that's what the bad guys do, is they watch internet traffic pass over the sky. Mm-hmm. Essentially, they could see that. And so it could be intercepted. Now, will it be? You don't ever know.
Right.
But it definitely can be. Sure. And so WhatsApp is trying to say, hey, we're encrypted, we're secure, and we're safe. And so they want people to think that they're safe.
Right.
And so like we mentioned yesterday, one of the valid reasons to use that is there are, missionaries, people that are traveling overseas. Mm-hmm. They want to be able to send communications back home securely.
Right.
And WhatsApp is a great way to do that.
Sure.
And so WhatsApp is like all these other apps, is that there are some really good reasons to use them. There are great use cases.
For adults. Yes.
I can think of no use cases for kids, because they're like, oh, well, my kid wants to talk to the missionaries' kids. Great. Do that through your phone and your account. They are welcome to do that.
Right.
And so make that okay. But do not give this technology into the hands of your kids, because there's no reason for them to have it.
Yeah. And one of the things that we see that is super common with predators with WhatsApp is they'll meet a kid on a more mainstream platform, wherever it is. Instagram, it could be gaming, but one of the first things that happens is trying to move that conversation to a secondary location. It's the same idea in some context as it would be with kidnapping. You never want to make it to the second location, right? Because that's definitely an unsafe place. Same thing online. As soon as a predator moves that conversation to a second location, things got a lot more dangerous. Right. But they want to move that conversation to WhatsApp because they know that there's less evidence if they get caught. We even saw this last year. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children releases statistics every year of the numbers of, like, for instance, online sexual exploitation of kids. We've seen this huge, steady increase since pre-COVID 2019 of numbers of that report. This past year, 2024, is the first year there was a decrease. NCMEC is saying it's because these apps are now promoting this end-to-end encryption. There are reporting issues. So it's getting difficult to report when predators are doing really inappropriate things to kids because of that technology. So all that to say, we don't have I don't have beef with WhatsApp. I'm not telling you start a fight with your spouse because they're using it. That doesn't mean they're doing something sketchy, but probably it's not an app you want your kids using. So, all right, YouTube.
Yeah, so we touched on YouTube, so I just wanted to talk about that. And a lot of people don't think of YouTube as a social app.
Right.
But the reality is that YouTube, like everybody else, they got into shorts. Right? There's lots of engagement through comments. And so the thing that you'll see on any YouTube video you want is make sure you like and subscribe, right? Because that does help their numbers. And when they say that, that is true. That is how YouTube can when somebody's searching for something, knows if it's something is good enough to come up in the search results. But then you also see them want to engage in the comments. And that's this social aspect of it. And so, again, you see really, anything between good and toxic stuff there. And so when your kids are engaging YouTube, because that's where a lot of them are absorbing content these days. And so, Netflix, Disney Plus, all those streaming apps, they are all essentially trying to fight for subscribers, and they're losing subscribers pretty much every year.
Yeah.
And what a lot of those folks are going is they're going to YouTube for that because I think people like that the realness of those interactions. One of the things that we might even touch on next episode is that parents find it really weird that their kids want to watch people play video games.
Yeah.
And so what I kind of tell kids, I was like, hey, so when your parents call you out for this, ask them how much they watch HGTV and House Hunters. Right. And so, hey, so is it weird that I'm watching somebody play a game that maybe I don't have time to play or don't have the means to play? When you're sitting here watching HGTV, watching them remodel this house, why don't you just go remodel your house? And so, again, sometimes we have to be careful not to have the rock thrown back at us. But that's where kids like to engage in that content because they feel like it's personalized to them. And so in a way that other content isn't. And so, again, you just have to be careful. You have to set up those safeguards. There's YouTube Kids, which isn't perfect, but it's good because they're at least doing a little bit more control over the kind of ads that are seen there.
Right. Although I will say, watch out for the ads on YouTube Kids because sometimes they can be inappropriate. I say watch out with that, I still would prefer if you've got a young kid who's using YouTube Kids is definitely a better option than just going YouTube. But don't put them in front of the iPad with a set of headphones on and have no interaction with what they're doing. Like, you got to be at least in the room with them. So if there is something inappropriate, you can hear what's going on. And they're not just listening to it over that headset and you have no idea what's happening. But don't use YouTube as the babysitter, I guess is what I'm saying.
Exactly. Still be the parent. Another constant, theme that we've had in this series is still be the parent. Watch out for those things.
Yeah.
One of the things that you may want to do is YouTube also offers YouTube Premium, which takes out the ads. And so there is a way to go ad free in YouTube. That's one of the things that we actually we watch enough YouTube content in our house that I think it's worth it to get rid of the ads so I don't have to deal with them. The kids don't have to deal with them. You don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah. And YouTube is not sponsoring this episode, by the way.
That is true. No sponsors here. But I do think it's worthwhile to if you're using some sort of service, that you consider to be free.
Yeah.
There are a lot of these services that you can pay a little bit extra money to reduce the ads. And so if you're primarily using any of these services a lot, maybe decide for you and your family if that's worth it to try to help protect your family. And, is it worth that, between what it is, $6-12 a month to try to help protect. And then also you don't have to deal with ads, which is also kind of nice.
Yeah.
And so this is another way to help protect your family, but then also be careful and look at their history, what they're watching, the streamers they're watching. We have an approved list of streamers in my house. And so we have a note that we share on Apple. If they want somebody approved, they have to submit it in the note, and I will check it off if I said that they can watch this or not.
Yeah.
And so the only problem is you just have to be careful whenever they're, especially when it comes to gaming streamers, they may be streaming Fortnite one day, and then they may be streaming something else that's a little bit more violent the next day. So see their history, but a lot of these streamers, they will kind of have like a genre niche that they're following. And so go and watch it for a little bit and make sure that there's nothing that's inappropriate.
Yeah, and some of those are fun. I mean, I know these are older ones, but Dude Perfect, some of those are fun things for kids.
Yeah, Dude Perfect's great. Super clean. So I don't know if we're endorsing Dude Perfect on this podcast, but I would definitely say that is good, wholesome, clean stuff that my kids watch.
Right.
And they love it. So there's lots of really, really good content on there. But like everything else, just make sure you're keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And another big thing on YouTube is that you can turn off autoplay. And as adults, sometimes that's a great idea. It helps to limit some of that binge watching that kids will just, they watch it forever. And we talked about this some in the last episode about how you can set some time limits on some of these apps. That's a great thing to do for your kids.
Absolutely.
To make sure that they are not just, spending 8 hours a day on YouTube, because there are definitely kids who will do that. Another big thing is to remind your kids, don't respond to strangers in the comments.
Right.
Because especially when you've got younger kids, I think YouTube is maybe the intro into a lot of social media for kids.
Probably.
And so that seems like a safe place to start. But make sure your kids know, just because somebody's talking about this Fortnite streamer that you're watching doesn't mean you have to be their buddy.
Yeah, and log into YouTube. So don't use YouTube when you're not logged in. So most people have a Google account.
Like
so
me,
so log
without logging
so
in.
You need to log in. And again, and it's one of those things. So logging into YouTube is kind of that same thing that we talked about a minute ago about whether or not letting the app track you whenever it asks you, do you want this app to track your data? So the good thing about that is that it's going to try to serve you content that you might be interested in, which is going to keep a lot of the content that it might be just guessing on. And so I recommend, so parents, log into YouTube with your credentials, then you can go look at the history and see what they've been watching.
Yeah.
And so I think that is also a really, really beneficial there. So make sure that when you're using YouTube, make sure you're logged in. So that way you have a way to track the history, and you can try to help set those algorithms to keep yourself safe by only watching and searching for things that you're interested in.
Yeah, you're tailoring content there. Absolutely. Okay, so action steps. Big thing that we've talked about through all of our episodes is talk to your kids. You want to have those ongoing conversations about what they're doing on social. Modeling, you've talked about that all the way through. You want to be a good example with what you're doing with your own social media, and let them in on that a little bit. Like, it's okay to say, hey, I want you to limit who your friends are. I do the same thing. And
Right.
You can show them that. But make sure that you're having ongoing conversations. I always encourage parents, pay attention in the news. And when you see a dum-dum who did something stupid, and we see it all the time, from celebrity athletes to, actors, whoever it is, politicians, people are constantly making missteps and misfires on social media. When you see the consequences of that hit the news, talk to your kids about it, because those are great real life examples to bring in all the time and have a 5-minute conversation about, hey, look at what this guy did the other day and how this affected his entire career. And I think that that's something that can definitely help your kids learn by example. Anything else you would add to that?
Yeah, I just want to cover our two big tent poles for social media, just as we conclude here. And so this is going to be true for all of these social apps. Like, the two things that are always going to be true is make sure your accounts are set to private. Again, we added the caveat for aspiring athletes. If you have a public account, use it only for that. Keep it public. And keep that control in a controlled environment. Everything else, all of these apps have the ability to set your account to private.
Yeah.
And so make sure that you have that set up. And then the second thing is location services. Make sure that you have your location services off by default for these apps, and do it at like the system level. Don't do it within the app.
Yes.
Do it at the system level. That way you know that it's under control. And then if you have a child that is a part of your family, and on iPhone or Android, you can go and set those, and then they can't go change that back. And so that way you can set those. So make sure those location services are off, because these apps don't need to know where you are. Be really good stewards of that. And you can make those choices on an app by app basis. We talk with the kids in the classroom all the time. Even the kids know. If we say, hey, should Instagram know where you are? No.
Right.
Should Life 360 know where you are? Yes.
Yes.
Should Chick-fil-A know where you are?
Absolutely.
Maybe. Oh. Right. And so that's one that may change based on where your situation is. If you are driving and they need to know when you're there so they can make your glorious chicken,
right,
then yes, it's a good thing. But if you're not 16 and you're not driving, then let's leave it off for then. And so, given those three examples, I always give those when we go talk to classrooms. And even the kids understand that. Instagram, no. Does Chick-fil-A? Maybe. Depends on the situation. Life 360, where our parents are tracking us, keeping us safe, then that's going to be a yes. And so the kids know that, and so we can help them walk through that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Travis, thank you so much for talking through this with me today. We'll have a follow-up episode on whether or not you unfriend me on social media.
It depends if I want to say hey to you at the grocery store.
To be determined.